You're probably wondering why is a grown man standing on top of a kitchen cabinet with one shoe on and one shoe off? Truth is, this is why I'm here. This ceiling has a few spots like this. Just over time, these types of things happen, and also the trim is getting a new coat of paint as well. Of course, before I even pull out any paint or rollers or brushes, I need to get everything out the way and cover every surface that I don't want to get paint on, including the floors. And if you're painting something or you've done this before, you know that this is the longest part of the project. Preparation always takes 80% of the time, and the rest of it is just painting. As nice as these decorations are, they have to come down because I don't want to have to be working around those while I'm applying this plastic. Even the light fixtures need to be covered whenever you're painting the ceiling because it will drip no matter how splatter resistant that they say it is. All paint will splash somewhere. And don't forget to cut the lights off so it doesn't melt through the plastic. And this is pretty much what the room was looking like after I got everything covered in plastic and got the light fixtures taped off. All I have to do now is sand down the areas that I applied some mud so that they can receive some primer before I go ahead and paint those spots, just to make sure that those areas don't bleed through. Kind of like these areas here on the crown molding where there was paint already before. This is a lot of the reason why I'm going to go ahead and paint it as well, but we'll start with this primer for those spots in the ceiling that need to be covered. Me personally, I really like this product. It dries fast enough to where I can start painting another part of the room, and by the time I get to it, it would already be dry. And primer goes a long way, so I try not to waste any, but I also like to put a pretty nice coat on the areas that have been patched before I apply this ceiling paint. And as far as this goes, I'm just using a regular 9-inch roller, which I don't recommend. If you have a larger roller, you should go ahead and use that. I have one, but of course I forgot it, so I just had to use what I had. And as one side was still wet and the other side has not been touched, this is definitely what it was looking like. And when ceiling paint is drying, you kind of don't know if it's going to look good or not, to be honest with you, because it dries in such a weird pattern, in my opinion. But I had faith. I knew it would turn out pretty good. But right here, I'm just cutting in on this section. And this was what I was doing before I went in with my roller, just to make sure I was getting all the way up against the crown molding and there wouldn't be a line going around the room where my roller couldn't reach. For the people that think painting is satisfying, I would have to agree. It's a little bit hard on your back when you're painting above your head and your shoulders and stuff like that, but nevertheless, this was pretty satisfying to watch go on. And I also cut in around the light fixtures, so even though it looks like it had already dried by now, those areas were still wet around the light fixture, so it all kind of blended together very well. And now this section is about to dry. I had that 1 gallon of paint and it barely was enough, but I did save a little bit. And this is what the ceiling was looking like when it was pretty much all the way dry. Now I know it's time to go ahead and paint the trim. Before I even think about just willy-nilly going in with a brush, I taped off the ceiling and the wall next to the crown molding all the way around the kitchen just to make sure I wasn't just gonna get paint all over everything. And I know some people can do this without putting down tape, but I am not yet at that level, so I had to take this extra precautionary step. And because of me having to be in these awkward positions and reach over the cabinet, I had to step on the countertop, and I did not want to do that with shoes on, so I kicked my shoes off, or at least my shoe. There's definitely a different level of confidence that comes along with putting down tape because in my mind, I know that once I do begin painting, I can just go ahead and go straight in with the brush and get it as wet as I can and have great coverage along the trim without having to worry about splashes or anything else. So this is what it looks like when it's all taped off. Now that it's taped, it's still not ready for me to go in with a brush. I'm gonna go ahead and sand it with this 220 grit. And also I'm gonna have a dry cloth and a wet microfiber towel. And that way, when I sand the area, I can wipe it down with my wet rag and wipe it back down with the dry rag. And I do this all around the kitchen to make sure I get, for one, good adhesion to the surface since it's already been painted before. And also, it will clean up the area. And when I wipe it down with a wet rag and a dry rag, it will remove all the dust particles from me sanding intensively. Once that's done, I'm pretty much ready to go ahead and paint, but there are a few areas that need to be caulked before I paint to make sure there aren't any huge gaps that will just be there sticking out like a sore thumb once I'm done applying the paint, because you'll definitely be able to tell with 2 fresh coats of paint. And this is not only just me repairing these seams, but somebody was up here before on a ladder when they applied this crown originally, so I just want to pay homage and do the right thing. But this is the paint I was using to apply to the trim, and it actually worked pretty good alongside this brush that was really good for cutting in, and also just a great brush overall. And really the name of the game is to apply heavy and feather out all the way around the room, so it just looks like one elongated piece of trim continuously flowing around your room with no splotchiness or patches where it's obvious that you stopped and started. You want it all to flow. And something like this can become monotonous if you don't actually pay attention to detail. So the way that I keep from getting bored is I actually apply myself fully to making sure that each speck of paint is going in the right place, and I'm cleaning all my materials afterwards so that they don't get clogged up. And this is what they would call the money shot. And this is an area that should have been caulked beforehand, but I guess I missed it, so I went ahead and caulked it afterwards to make sure there's no gaps. And I did that all the way around. As I was removing the tape, I like to remove the plastic, the tape, and everything all in one fell swoop. A project like this can seem intimidating at first, but at the end of the day, it's just one paint stroke at a time, one roll of the roller at one time. So you shouldn't bite off more than you can chew. Just do it in sections and consume it in the way that you can. Just don't let the paint dry while you're applying paint. Now all the plastic is up, it's time to remove the paper from the floors. And this is like my favorite part. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the finished product. This is what it looks like when you apply a slightly darker shade to the ceiling and a slightly lighter shade to the trim to give it a nice contrast. was doing this, the homeowner actually was outside photographing owls, and I thought this was the coolest thing.
That's our neighborhood barred owl. He's up there calling now. He was easy to find because he was real